Thompson. I am a nonprofit consultant here in Vail, Colorado, and I work with nonprofit organizations, and I do everything from nonprofit related, from getting started, campaigns, leadership, board and staff training. I've facilitated the nonprofit learning series for about 4 years. And I do it for free. Nonprofits attend for free. And we're able to do this because of our sponsors. So we appreciate and thank the Vail Valley Partnership, Mountain Youth, and US Bank for making this free to everyone. Okay, so I'm going to start out and introduce Garrett Mayberry with the Boettcher Foundation program. And if you all, I'm trying to be multi-dimensional here. And so I don't do two things at once very well. So, so anyway, Garrett is program manager at Boettcher. He oversees a portfolio of leadership grants, scholar enrichment grants, and the web-wearing biomedical research awards program. He also assists with communications efforts and social media. Before he joined Boettcher, Garrett worked as a fellow at a foundation most of us know, which is LaBaugh, where he hosted international visitors. He launched an environmental stewardship program and supported grants and communications. He also was an intern with the grants and scholarship programs at Boettcher. He was raised in Arvada, and he attended the University of Colorado Boulder as a Boettcher scholar. So he was a recipient and then went to work for him. He studied in Spanish, Portuguese, and international affairs, and was a president of the leadership class member and class advisor. When not exploring new running trails or soccer pitches, Garrett most likely will be found hovering over a plate of spicy Mexican food with a good book close by. So thank you for being here today, Garrett. And next we have Mel Mckinney. She is the Vail Board of Realtors Education and Marketing Manager. She plans and hosts events, educational sessions, and manages marketing campaigns for the Board of Realtors and the Board of Realtors Foundation. She provides affiliate members with information on their benefits and sponsorship opportunities. I didn't know that you were with Bright Future Foundation before as the communication and business coordinator. And also I didn't know you were with Can Do Multiple Sclerosis before joining the Board of Realtors. She's very active in Eagle County Gives. Those of us locally know Mel well. She is the consummate volunteer. She attended the University of Colorado Boulder and has a bachelor's degree from Colorado Mountain College. She's active as a Vail Valley Partnership ambassador and in the Women's Foundation of Colorado. And then we have, so welcome, Mel, glad you're here. And then we have Sandy LaBaugh. She is the Vice President of Business Banking and Community Banking at US Bank. And so we have had US Bank on the panel before. And so Sandy is not actually going to be on the panel, but she is going to talk about scholarships, grants, and other information that might be helpful to nonprofits locally about how US Bank has changed their funding priority, because I think it was 2 years ago that we had US Bank. And so she has some slides prepared at some point, so she can just kind of give you an update and we'll have her join in. So Sandy, thank you for being here and being willing to jump in. Okay, so let's jump in and start asking questions. So let's start out with a little background information. So let's start with you, Garrett. And can you just tell us a little bit about Boettcher and the mission and the vision and the goals to kind of just get us started and lay some groundwork? And those of you that know, you probably know this, that you can spotlight Garrett if you want to do that, or in the upper, in my computer, it's upper right-hand corner, you can just say speaker. And if you say speaker, then he will be highlighted. So take it away, Garrett.
Well, good morning, everyone. And it's great to join you from all of us around the state. Thanks, Robin, for the introduction. I'm with the Boettcher Foundation, and many of you might be familiar with the foundation or have seen the name on buildings or heard of the Boettcher Scholarship. But we're a private foundation. We're in our 84th year, and we're based in Denver, but we serve the whole state of Colorado. Our mission is really a belief in the promise of Colorado and the potential of Coloradans. So we invest in leaders and leading organizations so that they can give back in their communities for years to come. We have a number of grant programs. Robin mentioned some of those in the intro with my bio. We have a biomedical research program that's with universities, and we have a scholarship program that supports really great high school seniors to stay in the state of Colorado. My job is primarily focused on our responsive grant making, supporting nonprofits around the state of Colorado. And I know I'll have the chance to talk a little bit more about our application process, but I'm the program officer and point of contact for those. We used to be for 80 years just a capital funder when we did responsive grant making. Now we do capital, and we also do some sort of initiative-based granting. So look forward to talking about that more in a few minutes.
Great. Thanks so much, Garrett. Okay, what about you, Mel? Tell us a little bit about what the Vail Board of Realtors Foundation funds and the mission, the vision, etc.
Certainly. I should share a little background first. There is the Vail Board of Realtors Foundation, which is a 501c3. I see familiar faces on here from Eagle County Gives and from other nonprofits in the area. And then we also have the Vail Board of Realtors, which is a membership organization, I think a 501c6, and that is, as we put it, anyone can be a real estate agent or broker and sell property in Colorado and be licensed, but to be a realtor, it is a membership organization. And part of the regulations or what the requirements for being a realtor is involvement in the community and giving back to the community. So in 1996, they founded the foundation arm of the Vail Board of Realtors to help with assist with community efforts and also to give back to the community and to fund grants. We started a scholarship program just a few years ago. I think the first year we had 5 scholarships. So this past year we had 21, and in 2021 we had 19. So it's growing. And that is our goal, is to grow what we do in the community and community awareness for our foundation, and just what both arms of this do together. Our mission statement overall is to assist the community and our members. Our scholarships, our grants are open to organizations in the community. Scholarships, it does not have to be member-based. We do assist people who are not members. So we definitely want to make that clear. We do also fund local nonprofits who help in our community with a focus on education, disaster relief, and also just general support in the community.
Great. And so just back up a little bit here. So does the Vail Board of Realtors, do they also give grants to nonprofits, or is that only through the foundation?
The Vail Board of Realtors does also fund some things in the community. For the most part, it is through the foundation. If an opportunity does come up, for example, they've funded affordable housing through the Valley Home Store. They gave to the fund for that for, I'm drawing a blank here, sorry. So the Vail Board of Realtors overall does fund some things in the community, but for the most part, it does come through the foundation. So okay, just to clarify.
Okay, good. Thank you. And so while you're talking, let's go ahead and continue on and just ask you, have your funding priorities changed during COVID, or is there anything any different, or are you all reevaluating now? I mean, I know that, a lot of us have heard here locally about, real estate's through the roof, there's
sure.
Right. And so has that changed anything?
Overall, it has not, because some of the organizations that we assisted before COVID hit do work in the community in disaster relief and in helping those in need. That may be food need, housing need. We have granted funds to people in the community who are in need because of a house fire or medical needs. So overall, it has not changed. We did give overall $81,000 last year, which was a big year for us because there was a great need in the area. So we want to continue that and continue growing it.
And one more thing before I go to Garrett. So when you say area, does it have to be Eagle County? I know we have some people here from Summit County, and does it have to be Eagle County, or even is it more specific than that?
Sure. The funds are supposed to stay in Eagle County. So it may be someone from Summit County who also does work in Eagle County, or a Denver-based organization. We do ask that the funds stay in Eagle County.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Garrett, what about your current funding priorities? Has anything changed during COVID, and any reevaluation that you see coming?
Yeah, so we actually started at Boettcher on a bit of a reevaluation or recalibration before COVID hit. So I mentioned we had been capital funders when we did our responsive grant making for about 80 years. And then 3 years ago, we kind of put that on pause for about a year, paid off some of the grants in our pipeline, and then relaunched in like the very beginning of 2020, actually before COVID, our kind of new responsive grant making. So before we were capital and we funded projects that were kind of larger capital projects. We had cycles that had certain themes like higher education or kind of human and social services. Today we have more of an approach of, it's less on like what type of project it is and more of what the impact is. This is all on our website too, but we have kind of two main focus areas. One is called community connections. So this came from our board and conversations with the community saying, gosh, like we can create spaces for multiple nonprofits and a lot of different programming to take place. That's a really valuable thing for our community. So we look for things that fall in that community connections space. And our other area, which is a little bit newer for us, is called Transformational Initiatives. And that is looking at really innovative, oftentimes like regional or statewide approaches to solving a challenge. So there have definitely been some things we've supported related to COVID out of that. Or helping, for example, there was a large amount of funding that came in from the federal government to the state that was for school districts to publish some and do some research and do some pilots on education resiliency and how they might make their school districts more resilient and efficient through the pandemic and beyond. And we gave some matching funds to that to help some of the rural school districts outside the Denver area apply and compete for those funds. But yeah, we did do some grants to support the Help Colorado Now Fund and some things directly related to COVID. But overall, our grant strategy hasn't changed too much. And we have kind of those two focus areas that I mentioned.
And so that's great because it's like somebody was looking in a crystal ball and you all started changing their funding sources, your funding priorities even before COVID hit. So somebody had a crystal ball out there. Hey, Sandy, if you would just jump in here real quickly and just tell us a little bit about U.S. Bank's mission, vision, and goals, and the current funding priorities. And I know we're going to get to that with your slides here after a while, but just if we can kind of put that into the mix. So as we're all talking and asking questions that people can kind of know what U.S. Bank does, the ones who didn't attend when we had U.S. Bank on the panel.
Sure. Yeah, so U.S. Bank, for those who aren't aware, we're a community bank with national bank capabilities. And, we do have U.S. Bank Foundation, which is part of our broader organization that is available to fund grants. There were some changes recently on how they do that, but basically they're available to fund operating grants, project or program grants, and capital grants. And there's specific focus areas that we have for those. And those can change, but right now they're basically under the titles work, home, and play. And so, the building blocks that are really making our country great, a stable job, a home to call your own, and a community connected through culture, recreation, and play, continue to be the heart of possibility for all of us. And so those are the 3 focus areas for our U.S. Bank Foundation grants. So anything to do with workforce or stable jobs, affordable housing, and also, community, recreation in terms of culture and those types of things.
Thank you. And so the same question that I asked Garrett, or that I asked Mel. So does it have to be regional, like county, state? What's the geographical area?
Yeah, so it's basically, these can be for a 501c3 organization. That organization has to have non-discrimination policies in place. It's also based on designated U.S. bank markets. So certainly, we're big in Colorado, so this would be definitely an area that we would focus on. And those are the main criteria. And so we do have on our website some more information. It's basically an invitational only situation, but you can submit kind of a letter of interest, and then that will be reviewed, and then you can be considered for this type of funding.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. And we'll come back to you with a few others. And so you can jump in with some of these questions too.
Sure.
So Garrett, back to you. So how do nonprofits know if they really fit? I mean, like, what is the litmus test to see if your funding priorities are consistent with the nonprofit's mission?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we do have a fair amount of information on our website that I think explains those areas of community connections and transformational initiatives. So I think the first thing is to read up on the website and say, like, do I really align with one of these areas? Kind of the benchmark for sure is being in Colorado, which I think everyone on the call here is, and either being like a 501c3 in good standing, or a kind of government equivalent, like a school district or that sort of, or a local municipality. But in terms of being a good fit too, it's also something that you can kind of test through our process. So if you aren't 100% sure, I'm happy to take a quick phone call or answer an email. Another thing too is our process kind of has 2 phases. So we have an initial, we call it inquiry form. So if you think there's alignment there, we ask to fill out the inquiry form, which is 500 words or less, and some just basic details about your project or program. And the goal there is that you don't have to then expend the resources on doing a full proposal only to hear if it's a fit or not. That we could get back to you and say, yes, it's a fit, or we need more info, or no, it's not a fit. And then there's a chance to debrief from that to say, hey, what might be a fit, or in the future or not. So I really would encourage people to check out the website. And then if that seems to be a potential fit, to submit a letter of inquiry. And then we have info there on when we take the letters of inquiry. There's some set cycles each year. And I know I might be getting ahead of myself, so I'll pause there, Robin, because that might be some of the question about our application process.
Okay, and so just to clarify, so would you rather they fill that form out first before calling you, or if they have a question, would you rather they call you first and then fill out the form?
Either is fine, actually, and it kind of it depends, I would say. So if folks aren't even sure they're a fit at all, a quick call or a quick email could be really helpful, because they might say, or we do these multiple things, which of these things we do might be the best fit. Okay. Or if they think, yeah, we're probably a fit, but I want to talk a little bit more. Sometimes it's helpful for me or another staff member to have that inquiry form already submitted, because then we have some of the details that a person might be asking about.
Great.
So I think it depends.
Okay. And so I just want everybody to hear that he's saying, just call him, just contact him. If you have questions, if you have doubts, call him. So thank you for offering that, because I think sometimes that nonprofits are a little nervous about, should I contact him? I mean, should I not? And so anyway, so thank you for offering that. Okay, Mel, let's go back to you. So how does a nonprofit know? So, we said first off, Eagle County, but what else would be a litmus test to see if the funding priorities are consistent with the mission of the Board of Realtors Foundation?
Sure. And I'll start off by saying anyone with questions would be able to reach out to us as well, too. We always welcome questions. For us, the applicants, of course, have to be the 501c3. Funds should remain in Eagle County, benefit the local community, align with our mission statement, which is assisting the community and association members with need-based financial assistance, not-for-profit support, education, and disaster relief. Show evidence of a demonstrated commitment to our strategic objectives, which are supporting the community in Eagle County, education programs, promoting education programs, disaster relief assistance at the local, state, or federal level. And when reading this, what comes to mind is Red Cross, Salvation Army, organizations similar to that, and housing related programs. Our typical grant range is $250,000 to $5,000. And we do not award donations for individuals requesting funds for salaries. And of course, going back to what Sandy touched on earlier, discrimination on the basis of race, color, creed, sex, etc. And we do have this info on our site also at bbr.net. One thing to note with the foundation funding for nonprofits is we do start that in mid-January and it runs until mid-February. I think it's a 6-week application period. So that will be opening up and we do advertise that in the community. I will make sure that those who are on the call today are aware when it opens up. And of course, I'll also share that with Eagle County Gives members. We want to make sure you all know when that process starts. And then as far as our scholarship funding, that does start in mid-May, goes until mid-June. And the qualifications for that, if you know, if you work with youth who are wanting to go to college, university, institution of higher learning, we certainly ask you to have them apply. And the criteria for that is involvement in the community, academic merit, and residency in Eagle County, meaning they're graduated from high school, family based in Eagle County, or attending school in Eagle County, such as Colorado Mountain College.
And so are those annual, or do you ever do a recurring scholarship, or is it just, every year that student would need to reapply?
Sure, it is annual. And we do have students who reapply who have received a scholarship for several years in a row. We have one, I think it's her 3rd or 4th year. She's which is great. And then every year we do have new students who apply.
And so do those scholarships fit within the dollar amount? What did you say, 500 to 2,500 or something, or to 5,000?
It's up to 2,000 for the scholarship. I think that is sort of the average. That's the average award for the scholarship.
Great. Okay, thank you. And so while we're already talking to you, so does any current funding disqualify an applicant? Sometimes if they receive money from cannabis or government dollars or United Way or whatever, anything disqualify?
No, nothing other than what I touched on as far as discrimination or being for salaries and so on. No, we don't have any criteria as far as that.
Okay, great. How about you, Garrett? Talk a little bit about, does anything disqualify an applicant?
Yeah, I'll touch on that and then a little bit on the kind of the grant size and timing too, since I know Mel covered a little bit of that for their organization. So we do expect organizations to not be discriminatory and be willing and able to serve all people as appropriate with their mission. We don't have any hard and fast rules around, oh, you can't have funding from this source for us to fund you or that sort of thing. We don't even have like a requirement around, oh, if you applied and were declined, you have to wait a year, or if you got funding, you have to wait a certain amount of time. I would say, like, if for some reason your organization received funding, it's probably pretty likely we would wait at least a couple years before our board would want to grant again, just because we're a statewide organization and try to support great work all around the state. And then, yeah, and just in terms of our grant size, most of our grants under this kind of updated grant working framework we've been doing the last couple of years are in the like $15,000 to $75,000 range. So that's kind of just to help folks understand where we fall.
Okay, great. And, you know, sometimes with the funding foundations, they don't want to fund 100% of a program. They'd rather fund a partial of the program. They don't want to be like first in. They'd like to be last in. What about any of those requirements that Boettcher has?
Sorry, I had muted myself and I was looking at, so
I saw your lips moving.
Yeah, there are some things that we don't prioritize funding for. One thing I would say is it's under our transformational initiatives category, there have been some opportunities where we are one of the first funders in, but not the only funder, but it's kind of a group of folks coming together to make something happen. Under the community connections piece, if it's, for example, some kind of community center or library or social services center, we typically look for a significant amount of community support to have already been raised to show that, yes, the community is behind this at a local level. We don't have a specific percentage for what that is, and it can kind of look differently by communities, or some communities have more resources than others available to do that. In terms of some other things that I guess I would say we don't fund or prioritize funding for, we have like a list on our grant making page. One thing that we have kind of seen a lot of, even though we have a note about it, is we don't typically fund just general operating support or support for ongoing social and human service programming. So organizations that, for example, we run an after-school tutoring program and we're just looking for support so we can keep running our tutoring program again this next year. That's typically not a fit for us under either transformational initiatives or community connections. Oftentimes we're looking for projects or programs that are a little bit bigger in nature, or looking at developing new partnerships or being able to serve a new audience that they weren't before. So some kind of expansion or leveling up of an organization's work versus kind of just supporting ongoing programming.
Right. And so from what I hear from you, you're looking for more of a new project. And so it's not funding a project that might have, 3 years ago, the program was put into place, or it may not be capacity. So for instance, if they need to hire a fundraiser or whatever, it doesn't sound like that Boettcher's a good fit for that.
Yeah, we typically aren't as good of a fit for that. There could be a project that is, for example, it's serving a county or 2 counties and they want to grow, and they've been talking with another county or another school district or a nonprofit somewhere else, and they said, hey, we want to bring this programming there and work in partnership with someone or really expand to a new audience. That could potentially be a fit, but yeah, not as much of a fit if it's just kind of to serve the same audience in the same way.
Right. Okay, good. And do you all ever provide matching grants? I mean, would you say we'll give you $50,000, but you have to find the other 50,000? Do you do anything like that?
Occasionally, and these are great questions. So when we work with an organization, even in my role, like if there is a fit with an organization, I think as a grant staff member, try to view my role as helping advocate and find the best fit possible. So sometimes an outright grant is the most helpful. Sometimes framing something as a challenge grant can actually be really helpful in getting an organization's board to give or a community to give. So we'll actually like have that conversation with an organization if they're invited to move forward and submit a full proposal. We might say, hey, we're thinking that this might be the most helpful. What kind of structure could potentially be the most helpful for you? Because we want those resources to be helpful and leveraged in a way that's beneficial.
Wow, I love that. I just did a presentation on Giving Tuesday, and that was one of the things that I said, try to find a match. And even if you don't match it on Giving Tuesday, then go ahead and ask the donor if you can continue through the month of December to try to match that, because, donors love to double their money. And so, if you are willing to work with us to be able to do a match, I love that. So thank you. So Mel, how about you? You said that the Vail Board of Realtors, one of the things that it might do is kind of emergency funding, housing, or whatever. Well, so is it that they will only give a portion of the amount, or are there any programs where that it would actually fund the whole thing?
I'm not aware of a situation where we have funded an entire program. It's generally been a grant that has funded a portion of it. For example, coming and saying we have a program that provides shelter, and then we give a grant of up to $5,000 for it. We haven't funded an entire program.
And what about matches? Do you all ever do that?
We have not yet, but that, as Garrett said it, that's a great idea. So.
Yeah, because it encourages giving. Yeah,
we would be open to that, I think. So that's a great idea. I will definitely mention that to the foundation board.
Great. Okay, I love it. So we have some newer foundations that are on the call today. Mel, is there any requirements for how long they need to have had their 501c3?
There is not a requirement. You just have to be registered with the IRS as a 501c3.
Okay, perfect. And do you all require an invitation to submit a proposal?
We don't require an invitation. Again, we try to, as soon as that cycle opens up, we try to get the word out through all avenues. It's not invitation only at all. It just, the requirements, of course, would be on the application as far as what requirements they need to meet, but it's not invitation.
Great. Okay, thanks. And so Garrett, what about you? Are there any requirements for newer nonprofits as to how long they need to have had their 501c3?
We don't have a hard requirement as long as an organization is a 501c3 in Colorado. We do tend to, it's better track record if there's a couple years of impact there. Just from, I think from our perspective of, and our board's perspective of, is this organization going to be around and is it going to keep offering these services or this building if we fund it? So having a couple years at least is generally a good thing. We do also ask for financial statements. So typically an organization has to be large enough that it has professionally prepared financial statements. We ask for audits a lot, but some organizations we know aren't quite at that threshold, so we work with them. But generally it's not the smallest nonprofits that are a fit, because we do have some of that due diligence that we do. But at the same time, we don't have you have to be around for 5 years for that type of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting, as I'm working with some of my nonprofit clients and some of the foundations, that said to me, we don't fund startups, and so when when they go on to tell me why, it's because that they feel like that they've been burned for exactly what you said. They fund a startup for something and then the nonprofit doesn't make it. And so now that money could have been used for something of a nonprofit who is going to continue to operate. And so we totally understand that. And it's just a matter of showing that impact. And, I kind of relate it back to, like when you watch Shark Tank on TV and they want a track record, how many of this product have you sold before you come in? And it's the same way, I think, sometimes with granting foundations. And I was working with one granting foundation. I don't think she's on the call, over in Pitkin County. And I mean, in a short amount of time, in 30 days, we raised $1.2 million. Well, I think that, a foundation would look at that and say, okay, track record, we got it. Even though they'd only been around for a month or two, now they've been around for a year. And so, yes, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, one other piece I might add there, just related, is if a nonprofit, and oftentimes it's a better fit for us under grant making anyway, if there's some sort of formal or semi-formal collaboration. So if a nonprofit is smaller, perhaps doesn't have that track record, but is working under another larger, better established nonprofit, almost as their fiscal sponsor. That's also been a way where we've been able to help support some initiatives, but it kind of reduces some of the risk from the perspective of our board, in the sense of there's an umbrella organization there to help manage things and make sure that everything's taken care of.
Wow, so that's a good point. We have some nonprofits that have a fiscal agent, and even that would probably help because they've got a larger organization that's a part of what they're doing, as well as that collaboration piece. If a nonprofit can just collaborate with a larger nonprofit. So very good advice. Mel, I'll go to you in just a minute, but one more question for Garrett. So what is, like a typical funding cycle? Like how many proposals do you get? And then out of those, how many are actually funded? And then is that going to change here over the next year?
Yeah, great question. That has kind of been in flux, but I think we're getting a new baseline since this is just our second year with our new grant making. And even this year we tweaked it a little bit, but on our website, Boettcher Foundation, and then under our grant making, we have what our 2022 cycles are going to be, the dates for those. I think I just actually put them up yesterday, so hot off the presses. But what that looks like is we're gonna have 3 cycles, one that opens mid-January, one that opens in April, and one that opens in August. And those are built in a way that gives time before when we have meetings with our board, before they would approve grants. And then in terms of the kind of competitiveness that you asked about, we've seen anywhere from like 40 to 70 initial inquiries submitted during when that window is open. From that amount, we've invited anywhere from 5 to 10 each cycle to submit a full proposal. So I would say it's about a 1 in 8, 1 in 8 to 1 in 10, about a 10% moving on to a proposal. And once something is invited a full proposal, and if everything checks out at that point, I would say our board approves things about 90% of the time. It's not in our hands as a staff, as the way we're structured, but that's kind of how our grants tend to play out. So.
Wow. Okay, that's very good advice. So Mel, what about you all? Like how many people submit for funding? How many do you all actually fund?
Certainly, I think last year we had around 30 nonprofits who applied in January and February, and there were, I should have pulled that up, but it was around 20 that we did fund.
Wow, awesome. Yeah. And so do you expect it to be the same this year, or do you think it's going to change?
I would, crystal ball. I would say I expect it to be the same. It would be great if we do get more applicants. And as you were saying, when we started, for that understanding of what our requirements are, it would be fantastic if we did get, if it did grow a little, and that is part of our goal. So.
Great. Did you all hear that? They want more proposals. Come on. Okay, so Sandy, let me jump to you just a little bit with US Bank, and just tell us a little bit about what you all are seeing that as far as numbers of proposals and what's funded, because last time when US Bank was on the panel, there had just been a regional restructuring. And so one of the things that we had hoped for was how much money was there that was going to be distributed. And then the way the restructuring happened, we didn't get as much money here in the mountains. And so they weren't able to fund as many organizations. So what are you all seeing right now?
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have that, level of detail. There's another person that is in charge of that, and we can certainly, connect with her. But our grant minimums are $7,500, and then max amount is probably about $10,000. But yeah, I don't have all the details in terms of like how many applications or letters of interest we've gotten and how much is approved generally. But I think we have, on my presentation, it talks about $8 million have gone out from the foundation. So
Wow,
it's a sizable amount. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. And so, okay, so let's go back to Garrett. And so Garrett, when somebody doesn't get approved, you said like 90% will get approved after they get to the proposal stage. But what would you look at and say some of the major reasons why that people don't even get to that stage of being able to submit a proposal?
Yeah, I think at least what we've seen is the largest number of organizations that submit that initial inquiry form but aren't a fit are kind of just asking for that general operating or program support. And we're really looking for projects or programs that are really strongly aligned with those two areas. So something that's innovative, new, involves multiple partners, or has the ability to be kind of replicated or expand statewide. So we love that organizations are doing great work on site perhaps, or serving their specific community. But we're kind of looking at things that are beyond just a single organization's work.
Okay. And so if they don't get to that next stage, that's usually why, is because they're asking for more operating expense as opposed to a program expense that fits within the funding priorities.
Yeah, and then even a program expense that is supporting kind of that growth or expansion or something new compared to just their ongoing works.
And so let's talk a little bit, Garrett, about writing the grant. How do I know how much to ask for?
That's another good question. So I sometimes phrase that question, and I hope this doesn't sound poor, but as funder poker, and probably from your perspective as grant writers, or we don't know how much to ask for. If we ask for too much, we could insult them and they'll say no. And if we don't ask for enough, we left money on the table. In my goal at Boettcher is to not ever have that funder poker dynamic happen. So we have our range, which is generally in that like 15 to 75. Then if you're invited to have a proposal, I'll talk with you and I'll say, hey, based off of our budget, based off of similar projects we've given to, I think here's a range of what our board would probably support. Would that be impactful for you? And then we talk about kind of that number. So it's not necessarily a surprise. It's more of this is what we're going to recommend to our board, given that we have a budget for our grants, and there's some things they funded before in similar size or scope. So we don't really ask for that amount in the proposal. It's kind of based off of the size of the project, the need, and then just our budget and past precedent.
So it sounds like that we as nonprofits need to be really clear about what the project is, what we need for the total project, so that then you can give us a better idea of what we should actually be asking for.
Yeah, that's helpful for sure.
Okay, good. And so Mel, what about you? How would you say that we know how much to ask for?
That is a great question. I would say being clear on what is being funded. Definitely, if it's some of them have been tied to events, so it may fall under an event level. Just meeting the criteria for the requirements that we look at. I would not. Again, it's anywhere from $250 to $5,000 that we have funded. I would say, yeah, just sharing with us the size and scope of the program, how the funds will be used, an overview of that. That is helpful for us in determining what we can fund.
Perfect.
Or how much we can fund, I should say.
Okay, perfect. Sandy, can we get you to jump in here and give us a little bit more about US Bank and what they're doing right now, and to help us, because one of the things, and while you pull up your PowerPoint, I'll talk about what I remember from last time US Bank was here or was talking to us, that there's several different funding opportunities. There is, of course, the 3 areas that you talked about for the grants, but then there is, and I don't know what it's called, like a marketing fund or something. So if we were going to have some event and US Bank would be marketed, advertised as part of that event, and we wouldn't have to go through a whole process. We could just request money from that. And it seems like there was a third way too, but I don't remember what that third way was. So why don't you just tell us more?
Okay, sure. And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble pulling up my PowerPoint, of course. Yeah, so we do have the US Bank Foundation grants, which I mentioned, and those are kind of focused around work, home, and play type programming. And that's through, our website, and it's a kind of an invitation only, but you can submit a letter of interest. And so we're definitely, and we're able to help locally kind of navigate that process. If you feel like, you have a program that fits that mission.
And so just to be clear, there's 3 different areas, because one's work, one's play, and what's the third one?
Home.
And so each of those, at least before, they each had different dates that we needed to submit by. They were different funding cycles, and they each one had their own criteria.
Yeah, and there's more information on our website under Community Possible. And I do have a presentation that I'm having trouble pulling up right now, but there's a lot more information on our website if you look at Community Possible, and we can send out my presentation to the attendees, Robin, if you like.
Yeah, I'm trying to can't pull it up.
I know. And then we also do have a sponsorship budget for our Rocky Mountain region. And, we share it with other areas, kind of in Utah, Wyoming, but it's granted locally, and there's no set criteria. We do prefer to have employee involvement and not just, kind of slap our logo on something. We like to have people involved in whatever event or whatever organization if possible. And our company supports our employees by giving us time off to volunteer, which is great. And then they also have a program where if we volunteer our time, they will match in terms of $1 for doing. So it's great to get kind of our employees involved if you can in your different organizations, and we love to do that as well. So there's really no set criteria on the sponsorship, but you do have to get one of the employees of US Bank to kind of help guide through the process. And it's a pretty quick decision making locally here, just kind of our managers help decide, and we can get back to you pretty quickly. So
Great. Okay, well, thank you. And if you're able to pull it up, the PowerPoint, if there's anything in there you missed, I'll come back to you here in a few minutes and see if you
sure. Okay.
up either. So, okay, well, thank you for talking about that. And I know that after that last time when you all presented, that there were some nonprofits who did get funded who would not have submitted before. So thank you all for doing that. And the the criteria is pretty fun the way that that it's divided up into those three categories. Okay, so Garrett, let's go back and talk a little bit about reviewing the grant. So how many people review, whether it be that initial inquiry form or the proposals, and then, who are those people? Is it the board? And then, what happens? Like, what is that process? You talked a little bit about once it goes to that board, 90% gets approved, but tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, but so based off of the proposal we receive, we prepare a write-up for our board and share the information with them. We'll present a recommendation to our board, and then they make the decision on whether to fund it or not. After that, we'll get back to the organizations who knew that the proposal was going to the board, and then share the amount that it was funded at. If there's any conditions such as matching or being paid upon groundbreaking or the balance raised or those types of things. And yeah, it's kind of straightforward at that point. If something wasn't a fit, we'll provide the feedback why.
Oh, that's great, because some foundations, they hesitate to give that feedback. So that's great that you all are willing to do that. And I can imagine that sometimes what happens is that they don't get the best response when they give the honest feedback to nonprofits. And so they just like stop doing it and say, we don't want to do this any longer.
Yeah, typically if on our inquiry form round, that very first round, I do send like a form email essentially to the organizations that aren't a fit, but also there's a link to say, hey, if you'd like to email me or schedule a 15-minute debrief call, happy to do that. So.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for being willing to do that, because I think those of us in the nonprofit world, we learn so much by getting that review and knowing, what is it? Because you're just one foundation, it might be that we can learn something that we can use with other grant proposals that we write too. So thank you for doing that. Okay, Mel, so tell us, what is the process? Like, how many people review it? What's that whole process?
The process is our board of directors for our foundation who would review it. And that is consist of, it would be 5 to 6 individuals in the meeting, closed door meeting, and they would just review it, make sure that it meets the funding criteria. And then they would also, look at the budget, what could be budgeted for the individual grant proposal. So that's really the process of it. It's not as formal. In the situation where someone does not receive the funds or that they've requested, they would give feedback and give a reason why, whether that would be by email or by phone call, to just let that organization know why they weren't selected.
Great. And so I don't think you said if somebody is funded, do you then not fund them the following year? Or, I know Garrett said that, they wait a couple of years. Do you all also, or might you fund, you said scholarships, you may give somebody a scholarship every year, but what about just basic funding?
Sure. Similar for the grant funding, we do have repeat organizations who have been funded, for a few years in a row. Again, it depends on the program, if it's fitting with that criteria, I think that's really what the board looks at. And just how those funds have been used in the past. They will take that under consideration too.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, let's open it up for questions. I've been asking all the questions here. So what questions do you all have for our distinguished panel? Any of the three, for either US Bank, Boettcher, or for Vail Board of Realtors? What questions haven't I asked that you all would like answers to? And so I'll keep going while you all are typing those questions in. So Mel, I'd ask you to look in your crystal ball before. So if you look in your crystal ball again and say, what might your hope be for, what it looks like for this coming year for the grants that you would see coming in, that if you could just like wave your magic wand and say, I wish we could get grants in blank.
Sure. Oh gosh, that is a tough question for me. Again, we would like to see, more organizations from our community apply, or just to have awareness that that's there. And sorry, one thing I want to tag into this is the Vail Board of Realtors and the Vail Board of Realtors Foundation. The Vail Board of Realtors itself has funded sponsorship opportunities. So I would like to put that out there. If you are an organization that, if you, for example, apply for a grant and you're not accepted, but you do have an event at some point in the year, can't guarantee the funding, but that is something that we look at. Just to give an example, Eagle County Gives, last year the funds weren't available to be a sponsor, but this year they were available. So again, keep that in mind. But we do want to see when that grant cycle opens up in January. I would love to see more, local organizations applying for that.
Okay, so thank you. And there's one question down here for you. Do you prefer, Mel, to fund an event or a program?
There's not a preference as far as what the board looks at. I would say if it's a program, or I'm sorry, an event, let me go backtrack here. If it's an event, they want to look at what that event is going to benefit, which I guess does tie into the program. But again, there's not a preference as far as an event or program. One is not knocked out of, you're not disqualified because you're asking for funds for an event. But they are going to look at that and say that event is going to fund a housing program or an education program or some sort of relief in the community.
Perfect. And so while you're talking, go ahead and answer the other question, and then I'll take it over to Garrett. Are audits required for you to review grant proposals?
We do not do an audit. I think we would just ask for just proof of the 501c3 status, but there's not an official audit. I don't. Statement. I'm sorry.
A financial statement.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
But it doesn't have to be an audited financial statement.
No, we're not at that level yet.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thanks. Okay, Garrett, what about you? Do you all require an audit or just financial statement?
Yeah, so we ask for audited financial statements and prefer to have those, but also understand that that's not necessarily feasible or makes sense for smaller organizations. That's kind of the standard we ask for, but if it's not available, we'll work with an organization for the best financial, professionally prepared statements that they have.
Okay, and so the other question, it was for Mel, but I was just curious, does Boettcher ever fund events?
We typically don't fund events. We occasionally do if it's something that aligns really well with things we're funding, or if it's an organization we've already funded and there's an event that directly supports the thing that we've funded. that could make sense for us to do like a small table sponsorship or something, but we typically don't provide large funding amounts towards events or event sponsorships.
Okay, perfect. And that does make sense that if it's a program, you want to see that program succeed. And if there needs to be an event to support that program, then that makes perfect sense. So, okay, good. All right, other questions? Come on, you guys have to have some other questions. I couldn't have asked all the good questions. And so, Garrett, if I ask you the same question I asked Mel about, what would you like to see from nonprofits in, the grants they submit and in what they're asking for? If you looked into your crystal ball and waved your magic wand, what would you want to see?
Yeah, so I can give a couple of examples of things that have been a great fit. We'd love to see more of that type of thing. One that was a really great fit for our community connections area was in Clear Creek County, so not that far east on I-70 from you all. They created this collaborative care center, which was largely based around healthcare, which isn't a priority of ours, but the fact that it was a really collaborative space aligned with our community connections piece. So the county, kind of their health, human services, and public health folks relocated there. There's mental health providers, there's WIC and others, public benefit provision support. They also have a primary care clinic on site through Centura Health. So the fact that all these partners came together to create a project that was enabling them to all serve the community better was a great fit. So we look for like a lot of things that I would love to see proposals with a couple nonprofits coming together in a unique way to say, hey, doing this together is going to be 2 + 2 + 2 is going to equal 10 because of us just having that synergy being together in the same place.
Awesome. That's a great example. And, when you all look at your funding, some of the foundations, especially the ones along the Front Range, they give a higher percentage of the money that they fund to the Front Range as opposed to rural areas. And, Clear Creek, we'd look at that as more of a rural area. Are there, for you all, do you give more to the Front Range mountains, or does it just depend on the project?
Yeah, we're statewide funders. Our goal is to really try to give around the state in a proportional way to where the people live. And for a long time, we didn't do that as much because there were just more large capital projects on the Front Range and in big cities. We have kind of a special lens of rural depth and statewide breadth as we look at some projects as well, to kind of say that if there's 2 similar projects and one's in a rural area and one's in Denver or Fort Collins or Colorado Springs, the one in the rural area is probably going to have a little bit more weight to it for us.
Wow.
And I think our funding has shifted a bit because of that. So we are doing a little bit more rural funding than we had been before.
Great. Well, we're glad to hear that. So those of us up here in the rural areas are glad to hear that again, because sometimes, we see a lot more funding going to that Front Range big city type thing. So, okay, good. Hey, Sandy, is there anything that you'd like to add to this?
In terms of your most recent question?
Right. So more, like as far as the funding for US Bank, do you know, is a lot more of it rural or in the Front Range, or do you all just try to, and I know you're Utah also, and is it based on anything in particular as to, how the
Not really. It's really, people present opportunities to fund. And, obviously we do have different regions, so we encourage everyone to get involved in terms of submitting sponsorship applications, that type of thing. But yeah, I don't know the breakdown necessarily, but it's open.
Yeah, so what I hear all three of you saying is that, we just need to, number one, see if we meet your funding criteria. And then if we're not sure, to have a conversation with you. But, all three of you are encouraging us, come on, get out there and, submit the proposals. And I think that that's a really good lesson for all of us, is that, if we are not sure, to talk to the granting foundation and just ask them, just talk to them about it. And because they want to be able to fund us. I was just saying this morning, why somebody had asked me why that I enjoy raising money, which is kind of a funny thing. Why do I enjoy raising money? And I said, because when you have someone who has money and wants to give it to a good cause, and then you have a good cause that needs money, and you put those two together, it's just magical. And so when we're able to put all of that together, then we're helping those of you who are funding nonprofits, and because you want to give that money to a good cause. And those of us that are in nonprofits, we need that money. And so to make the organization run well. So anyway, so great. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. Mel, there's a question for you. I'm interested in your Vail Gives opportunity. Would you explain some of the first steps that were taken for Vail Gives before it was posted on Colorado Gives?
I'm just trying to understand the question. Is it for Eagle County Gives or?
So Barbara, if you want to come off of mute and ask your question.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, I was just wondering what things you guys did before it went on to Colorado Gives. Did you get a group of nonprofits together that were interested in having this one group out there? We've got two special funds on our Colorado Gives page, but so far Summit County does not have a Summit Gives Day, and I find that an interesting idea. So what were some of the first things you did?
I can't speak back to the early history. I've been involved with it for 5 years. It's been, I believe, over 10 years that Colorado Gives has been active, and it is a collaborative of Eagle County-based nonprofits who participate in Colorado Gives Day, and that is how that was the impetus for starting that. As far as steps you would need to take with doing that through Colorado Gives Day, I would reach out to the Colorado Gives team and ask what those first steps would be. We do have a fiscal agent. It is the Eagle Valley Community Foundation, which used to be our community foundation previously. So we do have a fiscal agent that our collaborative works through. Hopefully I'm answering your question correctly. I think that would be awesome if Summit County did start a Summit County Gives or something similar in your county.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
I was just looking, Barbara, to see if there's anybody on the call that I know were one of the founding members of Eagle County Gives. And I don't see anybody there. I see Grace, I see you there, but I know you weren't involved from the beginning. But you're very involved right now. I'm wondering if Barbara could reach out. Katie, did you?
It's all through the Regional Champions program.
Yeah, they call it the Regional Champions program. There are other areas around the state like Yampa. I think Yampa Valley Gives is one up in the Steamboat area.
And I came in after the first year. I believe it was Seth Ehrlich from SOS Outreach and Jeremy Reitman, who kind of called together the Eagle County nonprofits and said, we can all do better together. And I think we were actually kind of a model for some of the other coalitions. I think that if Barbara is familiar with the other nonprofits in her area, and they talked to Dana at Colorado Gives. She could give them some good suggestions. It would probably be too late for this year, but I think, we usually start in, isn't it April, that we start our planning and our meetings, and it's been great as far as not only the marketing efforts, but some of the grassroots efforts that everybody does together. So
I just put in the phone number and the email address of who you need to contact.
oh,
And it's Dana Rickenhart. So you'll see. And if you tell her.
This is not Dana's direct contact information. This is who they ask you to contact if you're interested in becoming a regional champion.
Yep.
And it may end up at Dana, but it's a general email and probably a general phone number.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you all. Thanks for the question, Barbara.
Thank you. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So if there are no more questions, now is your last chance to ask any of our panelists questions. And while you're thinking, if there are any more, Maren, if you're someplace where you can unmute yourself and just talk a little bit about what we were talking about, the future of the Nonprofit Learning Series, because this is our last one of the year.
Thank you, Robin. I'm going to keep my video off because my internet is unstable. It keeps telling me. Surprise. Thank you to our presenters today. We really appreciate Garrett and Mel and Sandy talking about their programs, and to everyone who has participated over 2021 in the Nonprofit Learning Series. We have done a survey in the past out to you all, but we probably won't do that this year. We just would love to hear your feedback. If you feel so inclined, please email me. I'll put my email in the chat with any feedback that you have. And then Robin and Michaela and I will start planning for 2022. So we would love to hear your thoughts on any topics that you would like to see, specific presenters, if you have any connections as well, that would be helpful for our nonprofit community. Please send those along as well. And then, I think one thing we'll discuss is if we will continue virtually or if we'll go back to in person. So I think that will be a big part of our discussions. So we welcome any feedback there as well. I'll put my email in the chat, so feel free to share with me any thoughts that you have moving forward for 2022. And thank you, Robin. Thank you so much for facilitating all of these. We appreciate you.
You're welcome. So thank you for the support from Vail Valley Partnership and also from Mountain Youth and US Bank. One of the things that we've talked about, and I want to plant this seed, is that, we've done this now, I think 4 years, and we're looking at, should we change the format? Does this format work that we're, that you're seeing, whether, granted we can go back to in person, but do you like this where, we're interviewing people? Would you rather have trainings? What would you rather have? So I'm going to encourage you to email Maren. You can email me too, but and just let us know, because we want to evolve this. We want to change it. We want to make it different. I mean, would a podcast work? Or, who knows? There's lots of different ideas of directions that we can go. So please email Maren or me and just let us know what you're thinking. So thank you all for being here today. We're going to give you 15 minutes back in your day. And I just want to thank Garrett. I want to thank Mel and also Sandy for you all being willing to come and share today and opening yourself up so that we as nonprofits can raise money even easier and better than we did before. So thank you all for being here, and please let us hear from you.